Hello, everyone. It's Luxura Moon Goddess, and today we will be discussing, is your environment affecting your frequency? So, let's get into it. And as you can see, I am outside enjoying a lovely day, and I just thought, being out here would be fitting for the topic of this video. So, let's get into it. Is your environment affecting your frequency? So, with that being said, certain environments, certain places that you're in, certain areas that you're in can, of course, affect your frequency, your mood, or what have you. This is why it is important you want to be in places and environments where it's going to keep you on a high frequency and in a positive emotional state. So, examples of places that's going to affect your frequency. For example, I really enjoy being outside. I love being outside. I love enjoying the sunlight. So, for me personally, I like to occasionally be outside, enjoying the sunshine, enjoying nature. It's something about being outside that really raises my frequency. Now, with that being said, and I want to also with being in certain environments, when you think about being in certain environments and it's affecting your mood and your frequency, it's important to also think about, there's going to be, when you're in certain places, there's also going to be certain types of people. So, with that being said, you have to really be mindful of the places that you go, where you're shopping, what area of your town that you're in, because obviously, with certain environments, it's going to appeal to certain types of people. hmm So, with that being said, like for example, there's obviously in most cities that you live in, there's sides of town that you generally want to avoid, and places that you don't want to go. For me, I don't really like being like, there's also certain stores that that gravitate and appeal to certain people. Like for me, I have to go shopping at certain times of the day, usually in the morning, because generally with some of the stores that I shop at, like lower discount stores, there's going to be, certain types of people shopping there. They may be, loud, rambunctious, obnoxious, or like I don't really like being in certain stores where there's going to be a lot of teenagers there, just because I'm past high school. I don't really want to be around that energy, and I like to. So with that being said, I usually accommodate, with my schedule. Okay, well, in order to avoid running into these types of people, let me shop, like early in the morning. For example, like I can go grocery shopping early in the morning. I like to go to the mall early in the morning. And really, when you do this, and certain people are different. And when I go to certain places, I generally don't like super crowded areas because it really just affects me, and I just don't like, people in the way. It's like when I go out shopping or whatever I'm doing, I like it to be relatively empty. That way I can get in, I can get out, I can shop in peace, I can take my time because there's not a lot of people there. But that's just personally for me. Now, there's some people where they're the opposite. They like to be, in places that's more populated. It just depends on, you personally. So some people, they're going to want to be, they're more social, more kind of, they just like being around people more. They may want to go to populated areas because it raises their frequency being around certain types of people. But again, it just really depends on how your personality is and who you are. hmm Now, it is important to be in places that's going to raise your frequency, keep you vibrating in a good mood. Another thing to really consider is where you live. Where do you live? Where do you want to live? There are some people where they're not really living in the city or state or even country that they really should be in. So you have to kind of take that into consideration. Do you like the city where you live? If not, because that can really affect your frequency, and a lot of people don't really consider this. Do you love where you live? And if not, what can you do? Is there a way? Is it possible for you to move? Is there, do you, and sometimes it may be, do you need to be in another side of town, or do you just have to move out of that city? It really is dependent upon you. I can say from personal experience, because I relocated, moved to San Antonio, Texas from Charlotte. And for me, it was a really big change. I'm not really feeling the city of San Antonio. Not to say it's not the worst city in the world, but it's just not really for me. And so I really do, and I am planning on some point moving once I get my finances straight and I'm able to do so. So, with that being said, do you need to move? Do you need to relocate? Where is it that you have to really consider with your personality and who you are, where is it that you should be living? Now, of course, unfortunately, this may be depending on your age or your income, because it does cost money to live in certain areas of town, certain states, and then of course, depending on your job and career, you have to obviously, be able to have a job to be able to move or relocate to a certain location. But with that being said, don't let that stop you from being able to move or go to a location where it's going to put you in a better frequency. Because personally, to me, I believe life is really too short to be living where you hate. You don't want to be living in a place where you dread, being in traffic all the time, where you dread the type of people that live in that city, where you're, stuck, because sometimes, and I can say from personal experience, you don't want to feel like you're just stuck and you're trapped in a city where you hate. Because the longer that you stay in that area, the more it's going to affect your frequency. It's going to continue to affect you the longer that you live there. And life is too short to be living in an area that you hate. So you have to really plan, you have to really think, okay, where is it, what is the best place that for me to be living? What would be a good place for me? And most people tend to live in a certain area for many years at a time. They want to get settled. So you have to really stop and think, okay, what would be a perfect area for me to settle down? Do I need to live in an apartment? Do I want to live in a home? Do I want to live in the suburbs? Do I want to live by the beach? These are the things you really need to consider, because where you're choosing where to live, it's going to affect your frequency and your way of living and how you feel. So, with that being said, think about the environment that you need to be in. Now, since I'm talking about homes and where you need to live, your home especially can affect your frequency. How you decorate a home is kind of like where you go to certain people's or other people's homes, or you're visiting a friend's house. It's going to affect your frequency differently than where what your own home is going to affect you. So with that being said, really think about how you design your home. What do you want it to look like? Do you want to paint the walls? Do you want to have artwork? What type of artwork do you want in your home? Because with the items that you're bringing into your home, the way that you're decorating your home, it's going to affect your frequency. Personally, for me, a lot of people nowadays are into minimalism. I can't be in a place where it's very minimalistic, where there's not a lot of items. I don't really like being in rooms where, it's a lot of white or like neutral colors, because to me, it's something about it. It's like it just affects my mind. It's like I can't think. I don't really know how to describe it. It's like I can't think or, focus, or like it's almost too sterile, if that makes any sense. Like it's too sterile. It's like, am I in the doctor's office? Why is it, it's kind of boring to me. So I know when I get my own home, I'm going to have it decorated a certain way. I like to have, not necessarily that I need my home cluttered, but I just have to have items. I have to have decor. I want my home to show my personality. I want my bedroom to look like, when they say this is my home, I want it to look like my home. I don't want it to look like something out of a magazine or, somebody else's idea of what a home should look like. I want it to look like my home. Mm. So, with that being said, if you're a homeowner, or even if you don't have a home, if you're living in an apartment, you need to kind of really be mindful of how you're decorating your home because, again, that can affect your frequency. Some people. They can't have a super cluttered home. Some people, not that they're necessarily neat freaks, but some people like stuff. It's kind of like when you see on YouTube where you have, people doing their organizational videos. Some people like things, they need things super organized. They need things in a specific spot, in a certain location. This has to be labeled, this has to be labeled, this all goes here, this goes over here. For some people, that is what just helps them because they can't deal with clutter. Sometimes when a room or a home is really messy and really cluttered, that can affect your frequency. And I understand, we get caught up with our lives being busy, and, some people, they're busy, they're tired from work, they're not really able to clean their homes or keep it as organized and maintained as they should. But with that being said, sometimes, depending again who you are and your personality, that can lower your frequency because your room is too cluttered. There's too many things lying around. So it just depends. Like I said, it's almost like kind of a scale, with structure and then, like, I guess less organized. It's kind of like a scale. Do you need it to be more structured, or are you somebody where you kind of just want things to be more organic? It just really depends on who you are. So, you have to really think about, how does your home really need to be? How should it look? And really maintain it, because if you're, again, you don't want to be in a home that you don't enjoy. When you come home from a long day of work, you want to feel, really at peace, like you're really at home. You can luxuriate here. Your home is like a sanctuary. Your home should feel like a sanctuary. You should not be coming to your home and it's like you don't even want to be in there, because this is the place where you rest. You sleep here, you live here, you eat here, you invite other people there. So, with that being said, you want your home to really feel like you. Have the essence of you within your home. hmm So, with that being said, now what else could we do when we're thinking about environment? Some people like to be out in nature, like I was saying earlier. And then it's also really good to be going out and about. Now, you want to be mindful, do certain events, go out to certain places. It's really good to take yourself out, or go out with someone, if you have a significant other or with your friends, because again, with that, you're going out to different places. It's almost like it raises your frequency. It feels good to be, in a change of scenery. Sometimes when you're stuck in the same place for a long period of time, it can be draining. It can affect you mentally. You may not realize, why am I feeling this way? I feel like I'm bored. Sometimes it's because you've been stuck in the same environment for too long. This is why it's good. Even if you're a homebody, I used to be a homebody when I was younger, but sometimes you just have to really kind of go out, even if it's not so often, even if it's, every so often, you want to be going out because it really can help with your frequency. Being stuck in the same environment is like being trapped almost, it's almost like being trapped in a cage, so to say. Now, when we think about different environments, Again, different environments are going to affect you differently. So where should you be going out? Try different things, try different areas. What is it that you like? I have been really getting into going to concerts. I love going to concerts. I love listening to music. And for me, being in that environment, especially when you're in an environment with other people, they're in a good mood, they're excited, they're happy, it raises your own frequency because other people are there and they're radiating on a positive frequency. And for me, I enjoy going to concerts, listening to the music, listening intently to the music, singing along to the songs, really getting into it. So I like to go to concerts personally because it's a good way for me to raise my frequency. So I like doing that in my spare time. Some people, they may like to go out for nature hikes or what have you. They might go hiking, again, being back in nature. Some people like to do more active activities like hiking. They can just simply go for walks. But you have to keep in mind and be mindful, different environments are going to affect you differently. Like being in your local park is going to affect your frequency in a different way than, say, being at the beach. It's different there. It's a different environment. You're at the beach. There's a body of water. You can be staring at the water and it can calm you. You hear the ocean waves. The wind is blowing. So that environment is going to be a little bit different than being at a park. Being at a park is going to be different than, so to say, being in your backyard, depending on what your backyard looks like. And speaking of that, if you're in your backyard, what does your backyard look like? Do you have lots of plants? Is it plain? What does it look like? Because even with that, even going back to the home, even though it's outside, the backyard and the front yard is a part of your home. What does it look like? Do you have decor in your backyard? Is it cluttered with junk? If you have lots of junk in your yard and in your house, or excuse me, not in your house, just like lying around in the yard, it's going to affect you. And you want to know why that is? It's because it's cluttered. It's messy. It's not really, looking and feeling like you. It's not the essence of you. And it's going to affect your frequency in a negative way. So, with that being said, you want to be mindful of the environment you're in. So with that, and again, going back to the topic of, there's going to be different people at different environments. Certain, with the example of concerts, let's say, for example, an Usher concert is going to attract different types of people than, say, a Taylor Swift concert. Not that there aren't people that's going to like both of them, but let's be real. It's going to attract different audiences. If you're listening to or going to a concert, for example, I recently went to an Earth, Wind, and Fire concert. An Earth, Wind, and Fire concert is going to primarily attract older people than, say, going to a concert for, let's just use the example, Doja Cat. It's going to be, more mature people, older people, and da 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 da. Because, there was a group from back in the day, of course, and it's going to just attract different types of people. If you're going to a smooth jazz concert, it's going to attract different people and it really is going to affect your frequency with the types of people that are there. And with certain people, there people can be certain types of people can steal your energy. They can lower your frequency. They can be draining. You don't want to be in those types of environments with people who it's going to clash with your own personality and your own energy. You don't want to be in environments with certain types of people, that's like, again, rude, obnoxious, or just doing things that's going to annoy you and lower your frequency because you don't have time for that. You don't have time to be around people that's going to drain you spiritually, emotionally, hell, even physically. You don't have time to be around that people because they're taking your energy and they're lowering your frequency. So this is why I'm reiterating, you have to be kind of mindful of where you're at, your environment, because not only the environment is going to affect you, but the people that are there are going to affect your frequency as well. hmm Yes. So, with that being said, be mindful of the areas that you're in and go to places that's going to be places that you're really going to enjoy. And especially, depending on where you live, because again, if you live in certain areas. Now, of course, it's harder to do this if you're living in, per se, a small town. Unless, of course, and there's nothing wrong with small towns. I like to go to small towns personally myself. But, of course, a small town isn't going to have as many activities as, say, a large metropolitan city. So, you just have to kind of be mindful of that. So, go out to places that's going to raise your frequency. You want to do this very often. That way, it's almost like you're maintaining your frequency and maintaining your mood. Stay on a positive frequency. That's way you're vibrating on the highest frequency. You're feeling your best. You're looking your best. And that way, you're really truly, especially when it comes to living your life, it's going to help you enjoy life much more. So, that is all I had for this one, and I will check you later on the next one. Bye!